Hi, everybody. My name is Elaine. I am an artist in residence with Hearts Need Art. And today we're working on an art project at our kitchen table. So thanks for joining me. So I have my phone set up at my table so you can kind of see a project that I've started here. I'm working on a 12 by 12 piece of just watercolor paper. Drawing paper would be fine, any heavy paper. I'm going to slide in and show you, you can do this project on a smaller piece of paper as well. Just have fun with it. There really aren't a lot of rules here. So let's get started. This is called Take a Line for a Walk. And it's a very free-form, open-ended, fun art project. It's great to do with kids. It's great to do when, oh, I'm up at, I've watched all the Netflix I can possibly watch, and now I need something else to do. So, all right, I'm going to show you guys how we get started here. So our supplies are, I have some water-based markers. I'm going to kind of bring them in and show you. Markers are my kind of medium of choice as an artist, so I have a lot of markers, but any markers that you have will work for this project. It's just a fun way to get some bold color on the paper. Then we're going to start with a regular Sharpie. Now, notice that I have a black marker here, and I have a Sharpie. Please use the Sharpie for this part of the project, because when we go back in and start adding color, as you can see here, the Sharpie is going to not bleed when you add your other water-based color on top of it. And that's what we want. We don't want any bleeding of your black line. So start out, and it's going to be very freeform. So you just want to have fun with this. It can be geometric. It can be really loose and loopy, like I'm making it here. But what you want are lots of spaces that kind of overlap. All right. And again, no rules, just kind of make it, if you don't like it, you can start over and make something else. But you can see what I'm going for here, all these little spaces that overlap. Okay, that's literally you're walking your line around the page. Okay, so like I said, I had one that I already started, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to this one. But you can see kind of how I made that freeform line. So we've got some water-based markers here, and this is a really fun project. You just kind of settle in and just let your mind wander, use whatever colors you want. I've seen these done before where they're monochromatic. So the entire thing would be shades of blue or shades of pink and red. I've seen them done where it's every color of the rainbow. You could even go in and do geometric designs just with different thicknesses, like a skinny Sharpie and a fat Sharpie, and maybe colors of gray. It's up to you. So anyway, I just kind of started here with just some whimsical, fun designs. I have some really great markers here that have a little paintbrush on the end. You can kind of see. And that makes a nice, easy brush stroke that covers a lot of ground pretty quickly. And you can, I've seen these filled in before with just solid color. That's really beautiful. Or I really actually like to go back and kind of decorate each little space. And what I'll do is I'll fill in kind of a background color and then kind of let it sit for a minute, work on another little area, and kind of let that space dry so that when I go back, it'll be dry and I can add, some dots on top of it or some textures or, whatever. And it's also fun to blend some of these colors together. So I'm gonna work up here and show you guys. Let's see if I've got. We'll do pink and orange. So what you're gonna want to do is start with your color that's a little bit darker. kind of lay that color down. And as long as you have, you know, a decent quality artist marker, they really blend nicely together. So we kind of rub them out. And I like to, you know, work kind of quickly because they will, they'll kind of dry on you. So you want to, ooh, that looks good. So it kind of ends up looking like fire in a way. This is also another reason why I really love these brush tips, because they blend so well together and you can use it like you would an artist's, you know, watercolor paintbrush. So I also have a set of markers that has a bullet point. So just kind of a more traditional, and that's going to be really good for dropping in dots if you want those. That looks easy, right? Because it is so easy. So then you want to, I have another end on this marker that has kind of a really skinny point, and that you can go back and do really fine work. Let's lift it up so you guys can see. You can kind of see the detail on that. So the point of all this is just to have fun with it. There's really no wrong way to fill in your spaces. So when I'm working with patients at the hospital, they love this project. It's, you know, a lot of people have anxiety about doing art, creating art. I'm not an artist. I can't draw anything that looks like something. This is so fun because you don't have to worry about that. I've had people do this project before where they're, you know, somebody has a little bit more confidence, they'll draw a picture of their pet or, you know, whatever in some of the spaces. But I think it's really so fun when it's just bright colors. Bright colors, textures, you know, just different ways to kind of just fill each little space. And this is a really fun project to do with kids because, not that we're all getting together in large groups right now, but if you've got kids at home and, you know, you need some family time, and like I said, we're all probably really tired of Netflix by now, this is really fun. Kids love this because everybody's project turns out to be, you know, really fun, really different. And another thing that we've done with this project at the hospital in the group art classes is we'll play music. We always play music in art class, and I'm a big fan of music because I think it really just helps you kind of tap into your creative energy. But either we'll stop the music or we'll change the music, and everybody has to pass their drawing to the person to the right. And it's funny because people they're like, oh, I don't want someone else coloring on my drawing. And they get a little territorial at first. But what's amazing is when that piece gets back around to you and you see what other people have added to your drawing, it's really phenomenal because some of the patients, they'd write, you know, messages of hope. And when it got back around, we would be at a table with maybe 6 or 8 people. And so when your piece got back around to you, it would be really fun to see what other people had written to you and drawn on your art. All right, so you can see how this just kind of takes shape. And again, there's no there's no hard and fast rule about how this has to go. You can just drop in any kind of shape or line. And I love markers because they're bold, they're fun, they're inexpensive. Growing up all my life as an artist, there is everybody has heard the term starving artist. That is a true statement, by the way, because art supplies are so expensive. And artist markers they can be a little pricey. However, once, if you invest in a good set, you'll have them. You will have them for a long time and can enjoy them. So see what I'm doing here? I'm going back with a different color, and see how the brush tip, it allows you to really get in those tiny, tight spaces. And you just kind of want to work it in so that that red and blue looks really cool up next to each other. And you just kind of work it so that it's not bleeding one into the other. But also you can see how I can touch the black line with my colored markers and it doesn't run. And that's, again, the reason why you want that Sharpie. I've also done this, Sharpies, of course, come in many different colors. So you can do your squiggle line with a colored Sharpie, and that's really fun too. Kids love that. You can get after this with gel pens that have glitter in them, or you can go, finish your piece and then go back and accent it with the pens that have the glitter. And I would like to encourage everyone, if you don't have art supplies at home, get online and order some, because if we're all stressed out right now and we're all bored and tired of watching TV, and I can't even tell y'all how much food I've cooked in the last, several weeks. This is, having kind of a creative process and practice really can relieve boredom. It can relieve stress. There's so many benefits to engaging in an artistic practice. And I definitely want to encourage all of you to partake in that. So another thing you can do is kind of go back and colors that are in the same color family, like you see I've got here like a super bright red going on. I'm going to lift it up a little bit so y'all can see a little closer. You can kind of see the bright red and the blue. So what I'm going to do is go back in with a darker red and kind of accent that. And what it ends up doing is it kind of gives you like a 3D effect, like a shadow on one side. And that's kind of a fun, you can drop in your major shapes and then go back in and add your shadows with a darker marker of the same color family. And it really kind of helps those edges pop and come alive in sort of a 3D kind of way. I can go back in and do the same thing with the blue, since I have the bright blue. I can kind of go in with the dark blue and add kind of that little shadow right on the edge of the red. And it really gives it a little bit of a 3D effect. And don't be afraid to use dark colors. I mean, sometimes what I'll do is I'll look at my pile of markers and I'll say, okay, I definitely have my colors that I go to, like my favorite colors. What is the ugliest color in this you know, cup or whatever. And I'll, you know, because instinctively I'll shy away from, you know, brown or mustard, or, you know, it's like I really tend toward the brighter colors. But sometimes when you pick a color that you don't normally work with and then say, what is the color this really wouldn't go with? Put those two things together. You might really surprise yourself and get something that is really different and fun. And just gonna kind of go back with this bright orange and fill in some of those the white gaps. So one way that you know you're in the creative zone, and if you're not usually a creative person, but you've heard people talk about this, oh, I'm in the zone, or, you know, right brain, left brain. So right brain is kind of the side of the brain where we access our creativity. And one way you definitely know you've been in that zone is if you've lost track of time, you're in the zone, or you have visited the zone, the creative zone. If you've lost track of time, and that's where I think the healing power of art lives, is in that area where we really kind of lose ourselves and just engage in something for the sheer enjoyment. So let's drop in this. I love this orange. It's one of my favorites because it really, I don't know why, it just covers the paper so nicely. You can see kind of, you can rub out it might rough up your paper a little bit, but that's okay, because you can go back and kind of scrape that off later. But you see how it really, see how I can just buff that out a little bit? It's fine. But it gives you that almost like fire, which I think is really a fun effect. So I'm going to take this all the way up and then show you guys another fun effect that you can achieve with the markers. If anyone's just joining us, we're live, and my name is Elaine. I'm an artist in residence with Hearts Need Art, and we're doing a project today called Take a Line for a Walk. And we started with just a regular Sharpie and done kind of a free form line. And what we're doing is kind of where those lines cross, we're just filling in the gaps with color and just some fun designs. So I'm going to go back. And again, I'm working in the same color family in this section here. You can kind of see. I think you guys get a good view of that. So I've got my bullet point marker, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to go back in and make, and the pressure that I apply to the marker, like barely touching it, I get a tiny dot. If I press down a little harder, I get a nice fat dot. So you get kind of that, it's almost like a bubble effect. Like it looks like it's effervescent, like the bubbles are just kind of rising up out of whatever's going on here. And the great thing about water-based markers is you can go back, and if you kind of revisit the dot you just made, you can make some of them darker. And leave some of them, you know, just blending in. But so we got that. And now I want to go back with maybe a little bit darker orange and give it like a little, just make a little C on one side. I'm going to hold this up for you guys. I'm going to turn it and hold it up so you can kind of see that that gives it like a 3D kind of effect. And all I'm doing here is just making a dot with a marker and then coloring in one side of it. Like just making a little dark accent on one side. And it really makes these little bubbles kind of stand out. So I like how that looks. All right. So if you guys are going to invest in markers, I'm going to make a couple of recommendations. So I really love the Tombow artist marker that I kind of showed you guys earlier. It has the brush end and it has the skinny end. These are, you know, again, starving artists. They're not cheap, but they're really high quality and they last and last. They don't dry out like cheap markers do. Zig also makes another great marker. They make these brushables. And these you can find, I think, at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, kind of where they do rubber stamping. So these also have a brush end and another brush end. But what's cool about this set is you have the darker color and then the half tone on the other end. So you have like a dark and light of the same color, which I really like. Zig also makes a bullet point, which is just more of a traditional tip. You can kind of see that. And then the other end is just a skinny, like a little skinny tip. Those are good for more detail work. And I always keep a Sharpie on hand because you always need it. And then skinny Sharpies too. And when you kind of get your colors dropped in kind of how you want them. Let's see, I'm going to go back in and add. Some more colors. Then you can get creative with, you can go back over it, like I said, with glitter. You can go back over it with, you can write. You know, if you have a favorite quote, inspirational, you know, something from a book or a Bible verse or, you know, something that inspires you, drop it in. It's, you know, this is your art piece. But see, I'm going to hold this up again so you guys can see it, but see how when I go back over it, this is the same color. I haven't switched colors. But look how when I go back over it, the paper just picks up more and more of that same color. And you get kind of a shadow effect. You see that? That was just going over it a few times with the same, just the same green. So it would be fun if I could talk to you guys or take live questions. But today we're working on a fun project called Take a Line for a Walk that is just, we're just roughing in some colors with some markers, just regular water-based markers. And then we're going to kind of go back and maybe embellish a few of the spots. So one thing I do tell people when I'm teaching an art class, because I think people really get lost in, or they get kind of held back by what they want the outcome to be of a certain project. This is a really great project to kind of help you let go of what the outcome is going to look like, because I think if you're attached to an outcome, and I guess this can be true with a lot of things in life, but especially in art, if you're really attached to the outcome and it just doesn't end up looking the way you thought it was going to or wanted it to, then, you know, maybe you're a little bit disappointed. But I want you guys to think of this as more of a journey. There's really no specific outcome that we're looking for here other than to enjoy the colors and to, you know, try something new and get yourself in that creative zone where kind of the stress relieving benefits of art really come into play. So I'm trying to be a little bit freer with this square here, and, you know, or with this section, and just let the colors kind of blend together. And, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Sometimes I think the most beautiful things in art and nature and the world are the things that are imperfect. So, you know, let it kind of evolve to be what you didn't expect it could be. So another thing we talk about in art class, sometimes it's just kind of a big free-for-all. Sometimes, you know, we'll do a little bit more things that are a little bit more instructive, and you'll start to notice that there are colors that will bring out another color specifically. Like, boy, that red and that blue really, it almost vibrates with an intensity when those colors are put back to back. So if you have, you know, you think about the colors, and I'm sure most of y'all have heard of, you know, the color wheel, but thinking about the colors and how they, you know, like our primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Red and blue combine to make purple. And blue and yellow combine to make green. So the colors form a relationship with the ones next to them and the ones across the color wheel. So if you really want to create that pop, choose the colors that are across the color wheel. I'm going to do a quick color wheel for you guys because now I'm all excited about it. All right, so we've got blue, we've got red, and we've got yellow. Okay, and so these two are going to combine to make green. The red and the blue are going to combine to make purple. And the orange and yellow are going to combine, or the yellow and red are going to combine to make orange. Okay. So when you're looking at this, so the blue and orange is opposite, correct? Those two colors really will bring out the best in each other. The purple and the yellow are opposites. Those two are really going to bring out the best in each other. Red and green, opposites. See what's going on here? So when you're wanting colors that either are going to be next to each other or in the same pattern on your drawing, it's great. See how the orange and the blue really just kind of really set each other off. So that's kind of a basic thing to know, but also kind of a good thing to have in your toolbox as an artist. Don't say I'm not an artist. Everyone's an artist. I believe in that. I believe everyone's an artist. It's funny because when we grow up as little kids, nobody is worried about how their art looks. They just create art because it's fun. And sadly, we lose that as adults. So, you know, I think getting back to that can be really great. Getting back to kind of just embracing the kid in all of us, and just enjoying things for the sake of enjoying something. Okay, so I had a thought as I'm coloring this red and green together. I remember that we've done this project at Christmas time too, or holiday time, and it is so fun because you can, you know, drop in little areas with, you know, snowflakes or candy canes, or, you know, it can be, I'm doing this area like a really light ice blue, and I'll show you guys how cool that looks when you drop in like some like little things that look like ice crystals. So there are all kinds of ways that you can enjoy this project. So, alrighty. So you just kind of go back with the darker blue. I don't know if you all can see that. I'll hold it up. I'll hold it up for you in just a second. And do little six-sided. And then you go back with the tiny little dots. There, kind of hold that up. And it looks like snowflakes. So yeah, this is a fun project to do at Christmas time. In any, you can kind of see how it's taking shape here. Okay, so my green is dry now, and I kind of want to go back. Let's see. So here's a good tip for working with markers. So you saw how I worked with these colors and I kept them very separate. I didn't block in the whole thing blue and then go back and try to make red because it would have gotten very muddy. So I am going to drop in another color here on top of this green, but I'm going to keep it in the same color family. So any kind of like a lighter blue would work, a darker green would work. But the minute you start to put red on something like this, or pink or purple, it's going to get really, it's not going to look vibrant and crispy. But let's work with the bright blue. And we'll go back in. And again, we're just dropping in what we're wanting to do is kind of work within the same color family here. And, oh, sorry. There we go. So we'll just do love. All you need is love. And markers. All right. So we've got that. One thing I can show you guys that is a really fun effect, and I'm going to make sure I'm centered here. Okay. So with the high quality artist markers, you know, any good water-based marker, you can work with just a small paintbrush, and you can get some really cool effects with water. So watch how I'm just going to drop in a blob of color over here. And then when you add water to it, magical things happen. It just turns to paint, and it's so, again, look how my Sharpie is holding its ground, which is what I want. Okay. And if you're going to blur your markers with water, color a little bit and then wet it, color a little bit and then wet it. You don't want to let that color sit on the page for an hour and then go back and try to wet it. It doesn't work as well. So it's really, you really get kind of a tie-dye. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. You get kind of a tie-dye effect. Look how cool that looks where the colors bleed together. I love that. So you can just take like the little corner of a paper towel and, you know, if it's in danger of, you know, spilling everywhere, but let it dry on its own, because you'll really get kind of that marbly. Let's see if I can hold it up to you guys without. See how cool that looks? And when it's dry, you can brush off the little, like if little bits of paper have scrubbed up, you can just wait till it's dry and then you can kind of just brush those off with your hand. And notice how you have not seen me pull out a pencil or an eraser this whole time. Okay, because the point of this is to kind of enjoy the colors without feeling like it has to be this, or it has to be this other thing, or it has to be exactly this, or perfect, or right. Ooh, that one's kind of dried up. Yeah, I really like it when I can just sort of let the project kind of be your guide. Let the markers go where they want. There's no specific outcome here that needs to be achieved other than enjoying how this kind of turns out. And later in the week, we're going to work on a project with this technique called drip gardens, where you make these blobs of color and then you tip your paper up, and the drips that come down from the blobs become the stems on these really colorful flowers that look like poppies. It's really fun. So maybe we'll tune back in and do that. But it's interesting how you wouldn't think of markers as being paint, would you? And this little treatment kind of opens up a new way of looking at markers. And it's kind of cool how you have some sharp lines and you have something that looks a little more painterly and wet. You have some things that, you know, represent something, and some things that are just very abstract. So any and all of that is good. The other thing I like about using the markers wet is that it really, it covers a lot of ground. That one doesn't want to blend very well. But using the markers wet, it helps you cover a lot of ground. I'm gonna wipe that one off because we'll go back, and this will be a good opportunity because I can show you how to fix a mistake. Even though it's not really a mistake, it's just, I've decided I want it to be something else. So I'm kind of just gonna rub that out. We'll let it dry and come back to it. So I don't know if anybody remembers being a kid and having the 64 box of crayons. That was like the best thing ever. Seriously. But this kind of like having the markers and enjoying kind of how they interact with each other, it really takes me back to being a kid. So, and what's cool about the kind of the water treatment, if you have a textured, like a paper towel or a textured piece of paper, you can go back in and dab it, and you still have a little hint of the color there, but it gives you almost like a little texture to it. Like here, we can do it here too. So it's kind of cool. Think about another thing you can do with this project is work in geometrics, which is really fun. So I'm just going to do a really simple cross hatch here. I guess I can take it all the way over. Okay. And I'm going to go back with just a lighter color, similar color. And it's interesting because with markers, especially if you have varying tip sizes, like if you have some skinny tips and fat tips and brush tips and all that, you can go back. There's just an infinite number of times you can go back and add something else in. See? So that gives us kind of a cool grid pattern. And then I'm going to go back in and drop in a dot in each one of these little squares. Just easy and meditative. And you kind of end up with almost a texture. You can also do something like this in, when I'm finished here, we'll do it, but like a fish scale kind of texture is fun too. I like this one. I like the blue and the orange. See how we got a blue and orange? See? Color wheel. All right. So yeah, that looks like, you know, somebody's really bad tie from the 70s, but it adds a different level of, you know, dimension here. I'll hold it up for you guys so you can see it. See? Just a different, something a little different. Okay, fish scales. I promised you fish scales. All right. Let's do blue scales. Okay, so I'm going to start with kind of a medium tone. I'm going to start with kind of I'm going to do these a little bit larger so you guys can see them. Just half moons. Okay. Now where the point of the half moon comes together, you're going to go to the top of one circle, half circle, and draw a little half moon. Okay, so you see how they kind of overlap. Okay. And don't worry if it's not perfect, because it'll all come together, you'll see. As like the way your brain reads the finished product, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. But see how I'm just dropping in that little half moon at the tip top of the previous semicircle. And you really get this cool kind of a fish scale effect. And when we go back and shade it, it's really going to look cool. So I'm going to drop these in. Kind of. Any repetitive motion is relaxing. Whether you're drawing something, especially if you're repeating the same pattern over and over again, it really kind of gets you into this relaxed state that, like we were talking about earlier, that's kind of where the healing power of the art process comes in. It's funny because this looks kind of like the head of a fish and the body of a fish, which I'm not sure I really intended that, but that's kind of how it's turning out. And that's so cool. If I was Bob Ross, I would say it's a happy accident. Okay, so you can kind of see I'm almost done here with but you can see how I'm really staying true to overlapping these little guys. Okay, so you're going to want to find two colors that are complementary, but let's see. And I always keep a scratch piece of paper close by so I can kind of try out the colors, because sometimes the color on your cap isn't exactly the color that you really thought you had. Let's see. Oh, that's too dark. Okay. You know what? I think these two will work fine. All right. So what we're going to do is color in where the little V is. Okay. And then just brush, 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 brush. Okay. So you get kind of a Actually, I think I am going to switch to that because that's going to give me a little bit more of a paintbrush effect. So you kind of color in, and then with your lighter color, see how the dark, it starts out dark, kind of where that shadow, and what you're doing is you're creating a shadow where the little scales would overlap, right? So on the front line here, you kind of just want to kind of start from, you know, a little bit of dark in the center and work your way out. You know, imagine to yourself, how are these guys overlapping? How do they lay one under the other? And that's kind of the color effect you're trying to achieve here. You can kind of see how I work from the inside out on that darker color. And it really gives and it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm using this lighter color to kind of smear it and give it a little bit of a shadow that makes it look like scales. And do one at a time. If you're going to do this effect, you know, kind of do one at a time. And another secret that I'll tell people, keep your cup of water handy, because if you have a marker that's, you know, kind of dried out, you can dip it in water and it'll kind of bring it back to life, which is nice. This is really beautiful, and you know, you can make a goldfish in orange. You can, I mean, I've seen paintings done that are just nothing but fish scales, and they're just really beautiful. But I'm going to hold this up so you can kind of see it a little bit closer. Here, I'll turn it. See? So you get kind of that that 3D shading effect, and when the whole thing is finished, like that section is going to look, it'll look really cool. It's really going to pop and really stand out. But I think instinctively, you know, we kind of gravitate toward the things that kind of, you know, look great and feel right. And it's funny because in working on this piece, I mean, who would do a blue fish? That's kind of weird, but look how great it looks right up next to the orange and the pink. And, you know, we can kind of go back down and rub off any of the little bits of paper that were roughed up. So you kind of see how the scales work. All right, we're going to go back down to this little guy here where we sort of kind of roughed up the paper a little bit. So if you have something that you really want to cover up, sometimes a darker color is really the best way to go. So what I'm going to do here, we're just going to drop in a big circle and go back over it. And if you rough in a pattern, you can kind of conceal something if, yeah, that's not really what I wanted there, or that color didn't work out. But see how the minute I drop in all of these other things that look similar, that little mistake kind of just disappears. Which is kind of cool. So another thing you can do is go back in with so we were kind of talking about colors that are opposite, and remember purple and yellow were opposite on the wheel. So if you go back in and kind of go, I'm going around this, I'm not really butting them right up next to each other. The effect, especially with yellow, will be that I've colored in the whole thing, but I really haven't, and I'm preserving, you know, because if these all bleed together, it's not going to look really great. So I'm kind of preserving the boundaries between the different colors. But you can kind of go back and I think your brain kind of fills in the little gaps. So then you can go back with something, again, that's in the same color family. This is just a really dark yellow, kind of a light orange, and highlight, you know, or shadow kind of around each one of these little guys on one side. It kind of makes it look like they're jumping off the page. You can go back in. Add a little more, you know, the blue looks really good mixed in there. That to me just has a lot of movement, which I have to say I like. And going with that effect, look, if I add another line on the outside of this and kind of just, that might be too faint for you guys to see. So I'll add this in like this. Then it almost looks like these little circles are kind of like shimmering or shaking. It also gives kind of the added bonus, and you can even go back in with your lines here, kind of making a little bit of separation since these are similar colors. So look what's happened with the pieces that we use the water on. Now that they're dry, let's go back and look at those up close. You really do get kind of a cool tie-dye effect. And I'll turn it so you can see this one. But these, you know, the paint, you know, the markers just become paint. And when they dry, they get these really neat edges on them that you can go back in with. You can go back in with markers, you know, of like a fine point and kind of accentuate these and just, you know, kind of where the paint naturally dried. It's really cool to go back in and just say, oh, well, clearly I meant to do that. Because I did. I didn't, but you know what? I did. And again, use your darker line kind of in the same, you know, color family to go back in and drop in some heavy contrast. You know, it can actually really look cool. See how it really just kind of makes it pop and look kind of 3D. We've got a really fun drawing going on here. So we're probably not going to finish this project in the 30 minutes that we have allotted, but you can definitely see a couple of the techniques that we've used. We've used some shadowing, some shading, like in the fish scales. That once that's finished, that's going to look great. We've done some techniques where we've kind of started with one color and then in the same color family kind of blended to the next color. We've done that down here as well. This, you can't really see it now, but I started with something and ended up, you know, it didn't blend right. So I kind of rubbed it off the page and then camouflaged it with a lot of texture and movement. And I don't think you know, I'm standing here looking at it. I can tell because I know where the little mistake was, but movement and texture, and kind of like a drawing technique that's maybe not smooth will kind of help you cover something like that up. We worked with the kind of a geometric texture. I'll hold it up a little closer for y'all. We also have a really cool texture right here that it's hard to see from far away, but close up it looks really neat. Let's see how these like just kind of pop out at you. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this project, and we'll try this on your own and enjoy all the different things you can do with markers, all the different ways you can make them interact and pass some time and relieve a little stress, and then at the end have something really beautiful to show for it. Thank you all for joining me today. Everyone have a great day. And